I'm John Schockel, and welcome to a Missionary Moment. I'm delighted to be joined today by my good friend Brenden Mann, who has come out for the weekend to visit with his family. And we're just spending some time to sit down today to talk a little bit about Brenden's story, a story of conversion. So Brenden, I met you at the University of Mary in our days when we were students there. Hooks up.
Let's go Marauders.
That's right. And so today we just want to focus on your experience of the faith, your experience of Catholicism, encountering Catholicism. So briefly give us a backdrop of your experience of religion, of Christianity growing up.
Yeah, well thanks John for having me on the Missionary Moment. This is awesome. I grew up in a solid Christian home. Guess it was an evangelical Protestant background. We didn't really talk too much about denominations. We identified ourselves as Christians. My parents were really strong, had good Bible-based values, and raised us up in that tradition very faithfully, and I'm very grateful for that. So.
Terrific. So you went to the University of Mary, fall of 2013, and as an evangelical Protestant, the Eucharist, properly speaking, was not, as Catholics understand at least, obviously was not in the forefront of your mind, perhaps not in the purview. How did you start to first encounter conversations or the idea of the Eucharist as being something central to Christianity?
Yeah, well, I went to the University of Mary really just to play basketball. I wanted to go to a Christian school, but I figured Catholic was kind of Christian enough. So I didn't go there with my faith really in mind. But naturally at a devout Catholic school, you're going to run into those people and develop friendships. And so just basically day one on campus was interacting and growing in friendship with several devout Catholics who naturally through conversation were presenting different truths of the Catholic faith, which I had no knowledge of really up until then. And probably the primary truth, or the most shocking one that was presented to me, was the teaching on the true presence of Christ in the Eucharist. To Bible evangelical, it sounded insane. And yeah, it was a shocking thing, and at first it almost kind of turned me off to Catholicism because it was just so weird.
So how did these conversations start happening on a deeper level? It sounded like you had a couple friends who just talked about it perhaps in a matter-of-fact kind of way. Oh, this is what Catholics believe. But how did you get deeper into the conversation and the thought of, maybe there's something to this?
So there were just numerous conversations with friends, but probably the main thing was I ended up joining a Focus Bible study at a varsity Catholic missionary. Focus, Fellowship of Catholic University Students. Are you aware?
I'll look it up.
Yeah, check it out. The varsity Catholic missionary on campus named Ben Keller. He's an awesome guy. I believe he's a Dominican priest or in formation to become a priest. We had a Bible study with 6 or 7 guys from the basketball team, and throughout the first semester was just going over basic Bible study stuff. Nothing too Catholic or anything like that. Or that's kind of what I thought. It was all Catholic. But then eventually, we sat down for study one Tuesday evening, and the topic for study was John 6, the Bread of Life discourse. And I was actually really upset by it. I couldn't believe that he was gonna kind of break this thing we had where we were understanding of, we have some Protestants, some Catholics here. We're going to keep this based on the Bible and not do anything Catholic. Right. And so I was so angry. The whole Bible study, I was staring at the same floor tile for the whole hour, didn't say a word. I was a total baby throughout the whole thing. But we're going through the truth of Jesus saying, you must eat my flesh and drink my blood. And saying that over and over throughout John 6. Just a stunning passage, but I didn't let myself hear it. So I go home after the study and was actually kind of thinking about it, and really was just embarrassed about how I acted through the study and how turned off I was listening to this. The next week comes for the next Bible study, and I figured my point had gotten across to the study leader, and instead he totally missed what I was thinking, I guess. And the next study was the Fourth Cup study by Scott Hahn, which was just how the Eucharist, the truth of the Eucharist is foreshadowed in the Passover, and how Jesus is the, I guess, fulfillment of the Passover lamb. And instead of me being just frustrated and angry that he was showing us this, like, everything clicked and my mind was blown. The truth of Christ's true presence in the Eucharist and that amazing sacrament was opened, and from then on it was just, I knew I had to pursue this and learn more.
So your meter took a significant shift from going, don't really know anything about the Eucharist or what Catholics believe, to after 2 Bible studies, like things are starting to pick up all of a sudden just after 2 hour-long Bible studies?
Yeah, basically. I mean, there's, lots of background in my faith to lead me there, but it was really just an hour or 2 that just did it like that. The Spirit was at work there for sure. And I remember I was talking to my roommate, who was also a Protestant after that, who was at study with me, and he was on the same page with me. He's like, dude, this is a problem. Like, we need to look into this, because there's something there. And from then on, the rest of freshman year, I was diving into approaching how to attend RCA, was reading books, talking to people, just consulting with people I trusted, and also just dove into listening to Lighthouse CDs, stuff like that, to really form myself. Because if the Eucharist was true, and the Eucharist was the central point, the source and summit of the Catholic faith, I knew all the other truths of Catholicism needed to be explored, and slowly I found each of them had merit and were true.
Right. That's fascinating and really powerful, I think, depiction of it is that, so as Catholics, and by the way, as Catholics, what we refer to here is Catholic, coming from the Greek word kataholos, which just means according to the whole. So to be Catholic means to be universally united. It doesn't mean we're just another sect or something like this. The idea of Catholics, properly speaking, is universally united in Christ, as he pleaded with the apostles to be at the Last Supper, be one as I am one, so that they believe in me. And one of the basic tenets of the Catholic faith, as you mentioned, is belief that the Eucharist is the source and the summit of the Christian life. Like, this is the pinnacle, the presence of the Word made flesh still among us, from which all grace and blessing flow. And it's just, I remember growing up I was a cradle Catholic, grew up in a pious Catholic family, and so hearing these things from a young age, it can just kind of sound like, just old news.
Right.
And one of the first moments I know for me that this really started to resonate with me was at a youth group that I went to growing up. And the youth group director was telling a story about how when he was at university studying, he was a Catholic himself, but a fairly lukewarm Catholic at that point. And he had a good, solid, on-fire evangelical friend, and his friend said to him, look, if I believe that Jesus was present, Jesus, the Son of God, was present in the Eucharist, in that bread, in the tabernacle, in the Catholic Church, I wouldn't leave there. I would stay there as long as I possibly feasibly could. I would be on my knees as much as I could spare the time. And I remember that struck me because, just as Catholics, like, do we actually believe that the Word is still made flesh among us? And so to that point, so you reached a point of kind of conviction here of, wow, the Eucharist, if the Church is right about its teaching on the Eucharist, then it's like an either or. Either it's true and I've got to align myself, or it's not true and we can say, there's just another option, another equal option. And so what was your journey after that? So you're taking these initial steps here. You're starting to have this conviction about the Eucharist, but just briefly, what about other barriers as well? Or what were the other barriers to becoming Catholic?
Other barriers for me, the idea of Mary was hard. That was even, my relationship with Mary was actually tough even after becoming Catholic. It just, I don't know exactly why, but it really took a long time to click there. So that took a lot of work and prayer and honestly just total submission to the truth and her authority. That was kind of, there wasn't a whole lot else, because once the Eucharist led me into understanding that the church was established by Christ and Christ gave the church authority to safeguard the truths of the faith, I pretty quickly accepted that, and was able to accept through the grace of God some hard teachings.
Yeah.
That maybe I don't think that can be hard to grasp, but I think,
Right. Yeah, just going back to the Eucharist, specifically to the bread of life discourse, the Jews, in speaking about this, used the very same phrase. This is a hard teaching. Who can bear it?
Yeah.
And the thousands upon thousands of people who Jesus feeds with physical bread, the multiplication of the loaves and the fish, they just leave him. They leave him. And he doesn't take a word of it back. He emphasizes it ever more when they question it. And so there we can see a kind of, see just how faith is not only reasonable and just taken just based on authority and reason, the authority of God himself, who cannot deceive nor be deceived. Jesus, the Word made flesh, who speaks nothing but the truth, who is the way, the truth, and the life. But also, the resignation of faith is a resignation of the will of God. You're God and I'm not. And so faith is not, as some people so commonly today just reduce it to, not just a blind leap in the dark. It's resignation to ultimate authority. It is, Jesus, I believe what you say, even though my broken human limitations prevent me from seeing it being true right now. And so, to your point, yeah, just as soon as we're able to give God an inch, he's able to give us a mile in return.
And that, it's so profound in that, yeah, just the total resignation to God's will and to Christ's authority. Like, if you're on the fence of faced with these tough truths and maybe feeling that call to conversion, to Catholicism, like, that's the best thing you can do, is just open yourself up to that and see your smallness and your weakness, and that ultimately it's Christ we're following. And even though this seems hard, it's a hard teaching, these are hard teachings, if it's Christ who taught them, I'm going to run to it, however painful it is, however difficult or confusing it is. And praise be to Jesus Christ. I was able to go all the way, come home, and get confirmed. So
took the leap. Yeah. Excellent. Well, there's a lot more, obviously, that could be talked about here, Brenden. But I thank you for taking some time to sit down and just share your story. There's so many facets, so many things that we can speak about, but so many experiences that it's hard to put words to when it comes to an experience of faith, right, and an experience of conversion specifically. But yeah, thanks for joining the Missionary Moment and a coronavirus distance shoulder bump there. It might not look like we're 6 feet apart, but Brenden, former basketball player, wingspan is just enormous. So
and the camera adds 2 to 3 feet together. You know, it's
unbelievable.
You can't trust it.
How about some quick shout-outs, real quick shout-outs to people in your life who contributed to your understanding of the Eucharist and conversion?
Ooh, give a shout-out. Luke Scott, friend from freshman year. Isaac Lindquist, who was the Protestant who was struggling with this and is now Catholic as well. Ben Keller, Focus missionary. Focus in general just was huge in my conversion. he didn't tell me to say that. That's a shout out, and there's no royalties here that I know of. But yeah, those are the big four. And also shout out to my wife, who we actually started dating when I was struggling through this process. And my wife is Anna Mann, by the way, that's her name. But she was this quiet prayer warrior, never pushed me, let me convert on my own accord. And I'm so grateful for that. So love you, honey.
All right, awesome. And of course, a shout out to Scott Hahn as well. He's kind of a player here as well. Dr. Hahn, I hope you enjoy this video. I watch some of your stuff as well, so consider it an even game. But all right, Brenden. Thanks everybody for joining us for a missionary moment.